The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the high school parking lot. The janitor, a man in his late 50s, with calloused hands and a weary but kind face, was sweeping the pavement as he did every afternoon. His back ached, and his mind was preoccupied with thoughts of his disabled son waiting at home. Life had not been easy for him, but he never complained. He believed in doing his job with pride, no matter how humble it was. As he leaned on his broom for a moment to catch his breath, the low hum of an engine broke the quiet of the evening. He turned to see a sleek black SUV rolling into the parking lot. It was the kind of vehicle that turned heads, polished, expensive, and out of place in the modest school lot. The janitor squinted, wondering who it could be. The SUV came to a smooth stop, and the door opened. Out stepped a tall, young man with a familiar face. It was Barron Trump, the youngest son of the former U.S. president. The janitor froze, unsure of what to do. He had seen Barron around the school a few times, but they had never spoken. Why would someone like Barron Trump be approaching him, a janitor? Barron walked up to him with a calm, confident stride. He smiled warmly and extended his hand. "Thank you for everything you do for this school," he said, his voice sincere. The janitor, still in shock, shook his hand hesitantly. Before he could say anything, Barron reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of keys. "This is for you," Barron said, placing the keys in the janitor's hand. The janitor stared at the keys, then at the SUV, then back at Barron. His mind raced. Was this some kind of joke? A prank? He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Barron nodded, as if understanding the man's disbelief. "It's yours," he said simply. "You deserve it." With that, Barron turned and walked back to the SUV, leaving the janitor standing there, clutching the keys. The engine roared to life, and the SUV pulled away, disappearing into the evening light. The janitor stood frozen, his heart pounding. He looked down at the keys in his hand, then at the empty space where the SUV had been. His knees felt weak, and he leaned against his broom for support. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he blinked them away. This couldn't be real. It had to be a dream. But the keys were real. The SUV was real. And so was the overwhelming feeling of gratitude and disbelief that washed over him. As the reality of what had just happened began to sink in, the janitor's mind filled with questions. Why him? Why now? What had he done to deserve such an incredible gift? And what would this mean for his life, for his son's life? The sun dipped below the horizon, and the parking lot grew darker. But for the janitor, it felt like a new dawn was breaking. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain: his life would never be the same. The janitor sat in the driver's seat of the SUV, his hands trembling as they gripped the steering wheel. The leather seats felt foreign beneath him, and the faint scent of new car filled the air. He couldn't bring himself to start the engine just yet. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions: gratitude, disbelief, and a lingering fear that this was all some kind of mistake. As he sat there, his thoughts drifted to his life, a life that had been anything but easy. He was a man who had known hardship from a young age. Growing up in a small town, he had learned the value of hard work early on. His father had been a factory worker, and his mother had cleaned houses to make ends meet. They had taught him to never give up, no matter how tough things got. But life had a way of testing that resolve. Years ago, he had lost his wife to a sudden illness. She had been his rock, his partner, and her passing had left a void that nothing could fill. They had one son together, a boy who had been born with a rare condition that left him unable to walk or speak. The janitor had dedicated his life to caring for his son, working long hours to pay for medical bills and therapy sessions. His job as a school janitor was far from glamorous, but it was steady. He took pride in his work, even if it often went unnoticed. He believed that keeping the school clean and safe was his way of contributing to the students' futures. But the job didn't pay much, and the financial strain was constant. There were nights when he lay awake, worrying about how he would afford his son's next round of treatments or whether he'd have enough money to put food on the table. Despite it all, he never let his struggles show. At school, he was known for his warm smile and quiet kindness. He always had a word of encouragement for the students, especially those who seemed to be having a hard time. He saw a bit of himself in them, the ones who felt invisible, the ones who carried burdens too heavy for their young shoulders. But now, sitting in the SUV, he felt a strange mix of hope and fear. The gift was incredible, but it also felt overwhelming. What would he do with such a vehicle? He didn't even know how to process the idea that someone like Barron Trump had noticed him, let alone done something so generous. As he finally started the engine and drove home, his mind raced with questions. How would his son react? What would the neighbors think? And most importantly, what did this mean for their future? When he pulled up to his modest house, his son was waiting by the window, as he always did. The boy's face lit up when he saw the SUV, and he waved excitedly. The janitor felt a lump in his throat as he got out of the car and walked inside. "Dad, whose car is that?" his son asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. The janitor knelt beside his son's wheelchair and took his hand. "It's ours," he said softly, his voice breaking. "Someone very kind gave it to us." His son's face broke into a smile, and for the first time in a long time, the janitor felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things were about to change for the better. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that this gift came with a weight of its own. What would he do with it? How would it change their lives? And why had Barron chosen him, of all people, to receive such a blessing? As he tucked his son into bed that night, the janitor couldn't help but wonder what the future held. The SUV was more than just a vehicle, it was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest times, kindness could shine through. But little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would test his character, challenge his beliefs, and ultimately change his life in ways he could never have imagined. Barron Trump sat in the back seat of the SUV as it pulled away from the school, his thoughts swirling. He had always been a quiet observer, someone who preferred to stay out of the spotlight. Growing up in a family that was constantly in the public, I had taught him to be cautious, to keep his thoughts and feelings close to his chest. But today, he had done something entirely out of character, something that felt right, even if it was unexpected. As the car glided through the streets, Barron replayed the moment in his mind. He had noticed the janitor weeks ago, during his first day at the school. While most students rushed past the man without a second glance, Barron had seen something in him, a quiet dignity, a sense of purpose. The janitor didn't just clean the school, he cared for it. He greeted students with a smile, picked up trash without being asked, and always seemed to be there when someone needed help. Barron had grown up surrounded by wealth and privilege, but he had also seen the toll it could take. He had watched his father navigate the pressures of the presidency, seen the way people treated his family differently because of their name. It had made him wary of people's intentions, but it had also given him a deep appreciation for those who worked hard without expecting recognition. The janitor reminded him of that, of the kind of person who did the right thing simply because it was the right thing to do. Barron had asked around discreetly, learning bits and pieces about the man's life. He discovered that the janitor was a widower, that he had a disabled son, and that he worked tirelessly to provide for his family. The more Barron learned, the more he felt compelled to do something. But what could he do? He was just a teenager, after all. He didn't have the power or resources to change someone's life. Or so he thought. One evening, while discussing charity work with his mother, Barron had an idea. He knew he couldn't solve all of the janitor's problems, but he could make a difference. He could give him something tangible, something that would show him that his hard work and kindness hadn't gone unnoticed. The SUV had been a gift to Barron for his birthday, but he rarely used it. He didn't need it, he had other cars, other ways to get around. But to the janitor, it could mean the world. It could be a way to make his life a little easier, to give him and his son a sense of freedom they hadn't known in years. Barron had thought long and hard about how to approach the situation. He didn't want to embarrass the janitor or make him feel uncomfortable. He just wanted to help, in a way that felt genuine and meaningful. When the day came to hand over the keys, Barron had been nervous. He wasn't used to stepping into the spotlight, even for something like this. But as he saw the look on the janitor's face, the shock, the gratitude, the tears, he knew he had done the right thing. As the SUV drove away from the school, Barron felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. He didn't do it for recognition or praise. He did it because it felt right. Because sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness could have the biggest impact. But Barron also knew that this wasn't the end. He had bigger plans, ones that would take time and effort to put into motion. The SUV was just the beginning. The news spread like wildfire. By the next morning, everyone at the school was talking about the janitor and the SUV. Students whispered in the hallways, teachers exchanged knowing glances, and even the principal was abuzz with curiosity. How had a humble janitor come to own such an expensive vehicle? And why had Barron Trump, of all people, been the one to give it to him? The janitor arrived at work early, as he always did, but this time, he felt like he was walking into a different world. The moment he stepped through the school doors, he was met with stares and whispers. A group of students approached him, their eyes wide with excitement. "Is it true?" one of them asked. "Did Barron Trump really give you a car?" The janitor hesitated, unsure of how to respond. He wasn't used to being the center of attention. "Yes," he said finally, his voice quiet but firm. "He did." The students erupted into cheers, and soon, others began to gather around him. Teachers, staff, even parents who had dropped off their kids, they all wanted to hear the story. The janitor did his best to answer their questions, but he felt overwhelmed. He wasn't a man who sought the spotlight, and the sudden attention was both flattering and unnerving. As the day went on, the story began to spread beyond the school. Local news outlets picked it up, and soon, the janitor's phone was ringing non-stop. Reporters wanted interviews, strangers wanted to know more about him, and well-wishers wanted to offer their support. It was more than he had ever imagined, and he didn't know how to handle it. But not everyone was supportive. Some people questioned Barron's motives, suggesting that the gesture was nothing more than a publicity stunt. Others accused the janitor of exaggerating the story or even lying about it. The criticism stung, but the janitor tried to brush it off. He knew the truth, and that was all that mattered. Meanwhile, the community began to rally around him. A local mechanic offered to service the SUV free of charge. A grocery store owner dropped off a basket of food at his house. Even the school principal announced a fundraiser to help the janitor and his son. It was as if Barron's act of kindness had sparked a chain reaction, inspiring others to do good in their own way. But amidst the outpouring of support, the janitor couldn't shake a feeling of unease. He was grateful, of course, but he also felt like he was losing control of his life. The SUV was a blessing, but it had also brought challenges he hadn't anticipated. Strangers showed up at his house, asking for money or favors. Some people treated him differently, as if he were suddenly more important than he had been before. One evening, as he sat in his living room, his son looked up at him and asked, "Dad, are we rich now?" The question caught him off guard. He looked at his son, at the wheelchair he had spent years saving for, at the medical equipment that filled their small home. "No," he said gently. "We're not rich. But we're lucky. And we're going to be okay." His son smiled, and for a moment, the janitor felt a sense of peace. But deep down, he knew that this was only the beginning. The SUV had changed his life, but it had also opened the door to a world of new challenges. As he lay in bed that night, the janitor couldn't help but wonder what Barron had been thinking. Why had he chosen him? And what did he expect in return? Little did he know, Barron's gesture was just the first step in a plan that would change both of their lives in ways they could never have imagined. The janitor's life had become a whirlwind of attention and activity, but amidst the chaos, a new challenge emerged, one that would test his character in ways he hadn't anticipated. It started with a phone call from a man who introduced himself as a wealthy businessman. "I heard about your story," the man said, his voice smooth and confident. "And I have a proposition for you." The janitor listened warily as the man explained his offer. He wanted to buy the SUV, for a price that was more money than the janitor had ever dreamed of. The amount was staggering, enough to pay off his debts, cover his son's medical expenses for years, and still have plenty left over. "Think about it," the man said. "You could change your life. You could give your son everything he needs." The janitor hung up the phone, his mind racing. The offer was tempting, more tempting than he wanted to admit. He thought about all the things he could do with that money, the treatments he could afford for his son, the house they could move into, the security they could finally have. But as he sat in the SUV that evening, running his hands over the steering wheel, he felt a pang of guilt. This wasn't just a car, it was a gift, a symbol of kindness and hope. Barron had given it to him not because he expected anything in return, but because he believed in doing the right thing. Selling it felt like a betrayal of that trust. The next day, the businessman called again. This time, he was more insistent. "You're a practical man," he said. "You know this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Don't let it slip away." The janitor hesitated. He thought about his son, about the struggles they had faced together. He thought about the long hours he had worked, the sacrifices he had made. Was it wrong to want something better for them? But then he thought about Barron, about the look on the young man's face when he had handed over the keys. It hadn't been about money or recognition, it had been about kindness, about making a difference in someone's life. That evening, the janitor sat down with his son and explained the situation. "Someone wants to buy the car," he said. "They're offering a lot of money. We could do a lot of good things with it." His son looked at him, his eyes wide and thoughtful. "But Dad," he said slowly, "it's your car. Barron gave it to you. Doesn't that mean something?" The janitor felt a lump in his throat. His son's words echoed his own thoughts, but hearing them out loud made them even more powerful. The SUV wasn't just a vehicle, it was a reminder that even in a world full of hardship, there was still kindness, still hope. The next morning, the janitor called the businessman and politely declined his offer. "I appreciate it," he said, "but the car isn't for sale. It's more than just a car to me." The man on the other end of the line was silent for a moment. Then he chuckled, a sound that was more amused than annoyed. "You're a rare one," he said. "Most people would have jumped at the chance. But I respect your decision. Good luck to you." As the janitor hung up the phone, he felt a sense of relief. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he had made the right choice. The SUV was more than just a gift, it was a reminder of the values he held dear: integrity, gratitude, and the belief that kindness mattered. But the test wasn't over yet. As the days went by, more offers came in, some generous, some manipulative, all tempting in their own way. Each time, the janitor had to remind himself of what the SUV meant to him, of why he had chosen to keep it. It wasn't easy. There were moments when he doubted himself, when he wondered if he was being foolish for turning down so much money. But every time he looked at his son, every time he thought about Barron's gesture, he knew he had made the right decision. The SUV had changed his life, but it had also taught him something important, that true wealth wasn't measured in money or possessions, but in the choices we make and the values we hold dear. While the janitor grappled with the challenges and temptations that came with the SUV, Barron Trump was quietly working behind the scenes. His gift to the janitor had been just the beginning, a small part of a larger plan that he had been developing for weeks. Barron had always been an observer, someone who noticed things others overlooked. During his time at the school, he had seen not only the janitor's hard work, but also the struggles he faced. He had watched the man arrive early and leave late, always with a smile on his face, despite the weight he carried. Barron had felt a connection to the janitor's quiet resilience, and he wanted to do more than just give him a car. He wanted to change his life. After handing over the keys to the SUV, Barron had reached out to a charity organization that his family had worked with in the past. The charity specialized in helping individuals and families facing financial hardship, providing everything from medical support to housing assistance. Barron had proposed a plan: he would fund a long-term support program for the janitor and his son, ensuring that they had the resources they needed to thrive. The charity had been impressed by Barron's initiative and had agreed to help. Together, they had developed a comprehensive plan that included covering the janitor's medical bills, providing therapy sessions for his son, and even offering financial counseling to help him manage his newfound stability. But Barron had one condition: the janitor couldn't know about the plan, not yet. Barron wanted the man to experience the gift of the SUV without feeling indebted or overwhelmed. He wanted the janitor to have time to process everything before learning about the next steps. As the days turned into weeks, Barron kept a close eye on the janitor's story. He saw the media coverage, the community's response, and the challenges the man faced. He also heard about the businessman's offer and the janitor's decision to keep the SUV. It was a choice that confirmed Barron's belief in the man's character, and it made him even more determined to see his plan through. One afternoon, Barron met with the charity's representatives to finalize the details. They discussed how to approach the janitor, how to explain the program, and how to ensure that he felt comfortable accepting the help. Barron insisted that the focus remain on the janitor's needs, not on his own involvement. "This isn't about me," Barron said. "It's about giving him and his son a chance to live a better life. That's all that matters." The charity agreed, and they set a date to meet with the janitor. Barron wouldn't be there in person. He didn't want to overshadow the moment, but he would be watching from a distance, ready to step in if needed. The day of the meeting arrived, and the janitor was understandably nervous. He had been told only that representatives from a charity wanted to speak with him about potential support. He had no idea that Barron was behind it all. As he sat in the small conference room at the school, the janitor listened as the charity's representatives outlined their plan. They explained that they wanted to help him and his son, that they had the resources to make a real difference in their lives. The janitor was stunned. "Why me?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Why are you doing this?" One of the representatives smiled. "Because you deserve it," she said. "And because someone believed in you enough to make it happen." The janitor's mind raced. He thought about the SUV, about Barron's kindness, about the challenges he had faced and the choices he had made. He felt a surge of gratitude, not just for the help being offered, but for the belief that someone had in him. As he left the meeting, the janitor felt a sense of hope he hadn't felt in years. He didn't know the full extent of Barron's involvement, but he sensed that the young man's generosity went far deeper than he had realized. For Barron, watching from afar, the moment was bittersweet. He was proud of what he had accomplished, but he also knew that this was just the beginning. The janitor's journey was far from over, and Barron was determined to be there for him, not as a benefactor, but as a quiet supporter, someone who believed in the power of kindness to change lives. The janitor's story had become more than just a local news item, it had become a source of inspiration for the entire community. People were moved by his humility, his dedication to his son, and his unwavering integrity in the face of temptation. Barron's act of kindness had sparked something powerful, a ripple effect that brought people together in ways no one could have predicted. One morning, as the janitor arrived at work, he was greeted by a group of parents and students gathered in the school parking lot. They had organized a surprise fundraiser in his honor, complete with banners, balloons, and a table piled high with baked goods. "We wanted to do something to help," one of the parents explained, handing him a check. "This is from all of us. It's not much, but we hope it makes a difference." The janitor was speechless. He looked around at the faces of the people he had served for years, students he had encouraged, parents he had greeted with a smile, colleagues he had worked alongside. He had always seen himself as just a janitor, someone who did his job quietly and without fanfare. But now, he realized that he was so much more than that. He was a part of the community, a thread in the fabric of their lives. As the fundraiser continued, more and more people showed up to offer their support. Local businesses donated goods and services, teachers organized raffles, and students created handmade cards with messages of gratitude. The janitor's son was there too, his face lighting up as he watched the outpouring of love and generosity. But the community's efforts didn't stop there. A group of volunteers offered to renovate the janitor's home, making it more accessible for his son. A local mechanic set up a fund to cover the SUV's maintenance costs for the next 5 years. Even the school principal announced a new scholarship program in the janitor's name, aimed at helping students who demonstrated kindness and resilience. The janitor was overwhelmed by it all. He had spent so much of his life giving to others, never expecting anything in return. Now, he was on the receiving end of that same kindness, and it was a humbling experience. One evening, as he sat in his newly renovated living room, the janitor thought about how far he had come. The SUV had been the catalyst, but it was the community's response that had truly changed his life. He realized that Barron's gift had been about more than just a car, it had been about showing people what was possible when they came together to support one another. The janitor's son wheeled over to him, a smile on his face. "Dad," he said, "do you think we could help other people too? Like how everyone helped us?" The janitor felt a lump in his throat. He reached out and took his son's hand. "Absolutely," he said. "That's what it's all about. We help each other, and we keep going, no matter what." As the days went by, the janitor began to think about how he could pay it forward. He started a small initiative at the school, organizing students to volunteer in the community and teaching them the value of kindness and hard work. He shared his story with anyone who would listen, not to boast, but to inspire others to believe in the power of generosity. The community's response had shown him that no one is truly alone, that even in the darkest times, there are people who care, who are willing to step up and make a difference. It was a lesson he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Life had taken on a new rhythm for the janitor. The SUV, once a symbol of overwhelming change, had become a familiar part of his daily routine. He used it to drive his son to therapy appointments, to run errands, and even to take the occasional weekend trip to the countryside. It was more than just a vehicle, it was a reminder of the kindness that had transformed his life. With the support of the charity and the community, the janitor's financial burdens had eased significantly. His son's medical bills were covered, and he no longer had to worry about making ends meet. The renovations to their home had made life easier, and the janitor felt a sense of stability he hadn't known in years. But the changes weren't just external. The janitor had grown as a person, too. He had always been kind and hardworking, but now he felt a deeper sense of purpose. He wanted to give back, to show others the same kindness that had been shown to him. One day, he approached the school principal with an idea. "I'd like to start a program," he said. "Something that teaches students the value of hard work and giving back. Maybe they could volunteer in the community, help out at local shelters, or even clean up the neighborhood." The principal loved the idea and immediately gave him the green light. The janitor threw himself into the project, organizing events and encouraging students to get involved. He shared his story with them, not to seek pity, but to inspire them to believe in the power of perseverance and kindness. The program was a hit. Students who had once rushed past the janitor without a second glance now stopped to talk to him, to ask how they could help. They began to see him not just as a janitor, but as a mentor, someone who had faced adversity and come out stronger on the other side. The janitor's son was thriving, too. With access to better medical care and therapy, he had made significant progress. He was more confident, more independent, and his bond with his father had grown even stronger. The two of them spent more time together, going on drives in the SUV, exploring new places, and simply enjoying each other's company. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, the janitor's son turned to him and said, "Dad, do you think Barron knows how much he helped us?" The janitor smiled. "I think he does," he said. "But I'd like to tell him myself one day. To thank him, not just for the car, but for everything that came after." The truth was, the janitor had thought about reaching out to Barron many times. He wanted to express his gratitude, to let the young man know how much his gesture had meant. But he also knew that Barron had gone out of his way to keep his involvement quiet, to let the focus remain on the janitor and his son. As the days turned into weeks, the janitor's life continued to improve. He felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't known in years, a feeling that he was making a difference, not just for himself and his son, but for others as well. But even as he embraced his new beginning, the janitor never forgot where he had come from. He remained humble, grounded, and grateful for the kindness that had changed his life. He knew that his journey wasn't over, that there would still be challenges ahead, but he also knew that he had the strength to face them. The SUV, the community's support, Barron's generosity, it had all given him something priceless: hope. And with that hope, he was ready to face whatever came next. The janitor stood at the front of the school auditorium, looking out at the sea of faces before him. Students, teachers, parents, and community members had gathered to hear him speak. It was a moment he never could have imagined, not in his wildest dreams. He took a deep breath and began. A few months ago, my life changed in ways I never expected. Someone did something incredibly kind for me, something that showed me the power of generosity and the importance of never giving up. He shared his story, the struggles, the challenges, the moment Barron had handed him the keys to the SUV. He talked about the community's response, the fundraiser, the renovations to his home, and the support that had poured in from every corner. But this isn't just my story, he said. It's a story about all of us. It's about what happens when we come together, when we choose kindness over indifference, when we believe in each other even when the odds seem stacked against us. He paused, looking out at the audience. I've learned that kindness isn't just about big gestures. It's about the small things, too: the smile you give to someone who's having a bad day, the hand you extend to someone who needs help, the time you take to listen to someone who feels alone. Those small acts of kindness can change lives, just like they changed mine. As he spoke, he noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was Barron, sitting quietly in the back row. The young man had come to hear the janitor's speech, to see the impact of his gesture firsthand. When the janitor finished speaking, the auditorium erupted into applause. People stood, their eyes filled with tears, their hearts touched by his words. The janitor stepped down from the stage, his own eyes glistening, and made his way through the crowd to where Barron stood. Thank you, the janitor said, his voice choked with emotion. Thank you for what you did. You changed my life, and my son's life, in ways I can't even put into words. Barron smiled, his own eyes shining. You're welcome, he said simply. But you're the one who inspired me. Your kindness, your hard work, your dedication, it showed me what really matters. The two men shook hands, and in that moment, they shared an unspoken understanding. They were different in so many ways, but they were connected by something deeper, a belief in the power of kindness to change the world. As the event came to an end, the janitor returned to his son, who was waiting for him with a proud smile. You did great, Dad, he said. The janitor hugged his son, feeling a sense of peace and fulfillment he hadn't known in years. He knew that his journey wasn't over, that there would still be challenges ahead, but he also knew that he had the strength to face them. The SUV, the community's support, Barron's generosity, it had all given him something priceless: hope. And with that hope, he was ready to face whatever came next. As he drove home that evening, the janitor thought about the lessons he had learned. He thought about the power of kindness, the importance of community, and the strength that comes from never giving up. He thought about how one small act of generosity could ripple out, touching countless lives in ways no one could have predicted. And he knew, deep in his heart, that he would carry those lessons with him for the rest of his life.